That's something that that senior members of the Republican Party advocated in the previous administration. It's something that senior members of the Republican Party advocate in this administration. It's something that they advocated prior to ISIL's significant advance across the desert in Iraq. So it's not surprising to me that they continue to advocate that position.
Presidential Press Secretary Josh Earnest talking about the necessity or the opinion of perhaps putting boots on the ground, a more significant American military presence to combat ISIS. We're rejoined by my old colleague Peter King, the Republican congressman from New York. Pete, you hear Josh Earnest, when he gets the questions about boots on the ground, he turns it into almost a stump speech for the midterm, pointing the finger at Republicans. I know we're fewer than 40 days away from a midterm, but does that kind of partisanship there from the podium disappoint you?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, but it certainly disappoints me. And, these guys just don't get it. And since the president himself keeps saying that we can't be sending troops everywhere in the world. Well, the fact is President Bush only sent this place, Iraq and Afghanistan. And also during that time, the terrorists did not make any advances on us after 9/11. And as far as the large number of troops in the Iraq war, whether you agree with the war or not, we were taking on one of the largest standing armies in the world. So no one's saying to send in 200,000 troops, 150,000 troops. So he sets up these false arguments and then tries to knock them down. They become cheap partisan shots, and it doesn't serve any purpose when you're trying to get bipartisan support for policy.
Well, Pete, when we take a look ahead with Congress, either in the lame duck session or once the new Congress is seated in January, do you expect a congressional vote specifically for an authorization of force for this commander-in-chief to continue the fight against ISIS?
Yes, I think, first of all, I don't think it's required constitutionally. That we can have a debate on. But I do think it's a matter of policy. It should be done. And the president, if he wants to get that, though, he's going to have to show more of a bipartisan spirit on this and avoid taking the cheap shots. And to me, I think it will show the country being united, and it will give the president the strength he needs if he's serious about carrying this out. But it's going to require a real bipartisan effort points over George Bush and Dick Cheney.
As we look at what's happening there in Iraq and in Syria, we need to refocus back here at home. Peter, as a frame of reference, you spoke about the competence of the Secret Service when the president came to New York to address the UN last week. It's interesting, in that same round of speeches to the UN General Assembly, the new Prime Minister of Iraq said that Iraqi intelligence picked up reports about the possibility of terror attacks here in the United States, and a lot of people started taking a look at New York City's subway system. My question for you is twofold. Number one, how reliable do you think the Iraqi intelligence is? How should we treat it? And number two, is New York City prepared, God forbid, if there is another domestic terror attack?
Well, that's the second part. New York is prepared as it can be. It has 1,000 police officers dedicated to counterterrorism. But on the other hand, we have 2 or 3 million people a day on the subways. There's 1,000 entrances and exits to the subway system. And so that requires intelligence. We can have all the forces on the ground that we can, but it's not enough. You need to have the intelligence, and that's something we're always working on. But we're not acutely aware of it here in New York, and the NYPD has done a terrific job on it. Now, as far as the quality of the intelligence, the reason I doubt it is that, as far as I know, Iraqi intelligence itself never contacted our FBI or CIA or anyone in the administration. So to me, this is a prime minister probably misunderstanding something he'd been told by his intelligence people, because he was in New York with 140 world leaders, and we had never been told that the city could be attacked in a subway attack. So if there was anything to it, his intelligence people would have told ours. And as far as I know, there was nothing to that at all. But
fair enough.
Fact, we're constantly looking.
Peter King, as always, we appreciate your insights as a member of both the House Select Committee on Intelligence and, of course, the Homeland Security Committee, and we look forward to visiting with you again real soon. That's Congressman Peter King. Time to call in now the editorial director for the Huffington Post Media Group. That would be our old friend Howard Fineman. Howard, welcome back to America's Forum.
Hi, JD. How are you doing?
Doing okay, thank you, sir. The debate continues at the White House and down to the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, and really from all quarters, the notion of Americans on the ground, boots on the ground. The president insists that's not going to happen. Will that come back to haunt him?
Well, the interesting thing to me, JD, is that the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, which we talked about last night on Hardball, I know it's one of your favorite shows.
I used to be a guest all the time. I don't get called anymore.
Well, I'll make sure Chris calls you, okay? How about
Sure.
we do that? But the Wall Street Journal NBC poll said that more than 70% of the American people expect there to be eventually, if not sooner, American combat boots on the ground in the region again. So whatever the president is saying, whatever lines in the sand he's drawing, the American people, both those who support the idea of putting boots on the ground in combat roles and those who oppose it, both believe it's going to happen regardless of what the president is saying right now. And I find that fascinating because it sort of means that they're not paying attention to what he's saying. They have enough experience with the sort of flow of events out of that region now after 13 years that they're making their own judgments, which I thought was very interesting.
Well, it also suggests, Howard, that the American people, actually public opinion has gotten in front of the president, so to speak. The public anticipates this, regardless of whether or not they think it's a good thing. With that kind of premonition, we'll call it, does it make it easier for the president to put in some elements of a ground force?
No, not yet, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure when he will find it easy politically. I think he's just in terms of the pure politics, JD. He's in a tough position because he has infamously, everybody knows, he infamously called ISIS the junior varsity, and he's staked his entire political identity on the idea of being the guy who ends wars and conflicts, not the guy who agrees that it's time for us to re-engage militarily. So if he does it down the road, his critics will say, "You're late to the game. You screwed up. You
Fair
were too
enough.
reluctant."
Fair enough. Don't mean to cut you off, Howard. We're up against the clock. We'd ask you to stay with us here. We're going to come back more with Howard Fineman, but right now let's pause. Miranda Kahn with a Newsmax Now update for us.